This year, President Obama made a proclamation that January would be the National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month every year, culminating in the annual celebration of National Freedom Day on February 1st. Annual celebration? If you are like me, before this year, I have never heard of National Freedom Day. And so I had to go back and do a little digging. I heard of the trafficking emphasis in January, but annual National Freedom Day? How many of you have ever heard of National Freedom Day before? You have, okay. Anybody, one person in this room has heard of National Freedom Day. All right, so I'm not the only ignoramus about American history. So in my digging, and I wanted to set this up for you because I think it's very important, it sets a context, it sets the platform of why this day is so special and why it's something that Americans need to be proud of. In 1942, a former slave born into slavery in 1855, Major Richard Robert Wright Sr., thought it would be fitting that there would be a national day that would celebrate the fact that Americans no longer lived in slavery. And so he proposed that there would be this day that would honor the Emancipation Proclamation. I won't test you to see if you remember exactly what the Emancipation Proclamation did, but in case you don't have that right here at the forefront of your mind, you know it freed the slaves, but did you know it only freed the slaves in the Confederacy? Most of us would kind of have to go, okay, gotta go back to that. Emancipation Proclamation freed just the slaves in the Confederacy. But then in 1865, President Lincoln signed the 13th Amendment, which is here above us, to the Constitution, and that freed all the slaves in the United States, not just in those in the Confederacy. And then, so this major who had been born into slavery and thought that it would be so fantastic for all of Americans to honor the fact that we lived in freedom and there was no such thing as slavery in the United States anymore. It took about 6 more years before it really drew a lot of attention. And in 1948, President Harry Truman sent on February 1st to the states this proclamation that there would be a National Freedom Day. And for the last 62 years, America has had a National Freedom Day. So we are really behind on this, you guys. But this year, President Obama upped the game. He changed it because he not only had said that January would be the National Month for Human Trafficking Prevention, but that whole month emphasis in the United States would culminate on this day. From now on February 1st, then he broadened it so that it was not just a celebration that we have of our past, of the freedom from slavery in our country and what had happened in the Civil War, but that it would also be broadened to include the fact that there are slaves in our world today, in fact, more slaves than there were even during the Civil War, and that America was going to do something about it. It was a day that we were going to celebrate the fact that America no longer had a slavery system, but it was going to be a day that we have the opportunity to say, but there are millions and millions and millions, in fact, 27 million men, women, and children, they estimate, are enslaved around the world right now, many more than were in that period, that awful period of our time in the 1800s. And that this would be a day that we would remember them, pray for them, dedicate ourselves to doing something about this $32 billion a year industry. That's a staggering amount of money that goes into the sex trade or the human slavery traffic in our world. And if you've read my book, Dangerous Surrender, which is now retitled Say Yes to God, you know that I talk about my firsthand experiences of coming face to face with the sex trade industry and human trafficking. It was an incredibly moving time for me. It was when I was in Cambodia and Thailand attending the International AIDS Conference. And while I was there, I asked International Justice Mission if they would teach me, if they would educate me a little bit about human trafficking and about the sex trade, because I knew absolutely nothing. And so while we were in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, they took me to a place called Svay Pak. In English, it's called the Street of the Little Flowers. I'm told that most of the taxi drivers in downtown Phnom Penh, if you were to say the Street of the Little Flowers, they would know exactly where you wanted to go, and they would take you. And in my ignorance, I thought that that meant this was a beautiful place, the Street of the Little Flowers. I'm envisioning gardens and hanging pots of flowers and serenity and a place of peacefulness and joy and beauty. But I want to show you, this is what I found instead. On a very narrow street, barely wide enough for our car to traverse, on one side were buildings like this with locked metal doors, padlocked shut. Behind it were children as young as 4, 5, 6 years old, And they were being held behind these locked doors until dusk, because at dusk, across the street from these buildings with the padlocked doors were little cafes where there were mostly Western men gathered drinking coffee, drinking their Coke, waiting until the cover of darkness when those doors would be unlocked and those children would come up for sale. And at that time, and I don't think it's changed that much in these few years since then, for $300 you could buy a little girl and you could take her to your hotel room for a week. Do whatever you wanted to do to her, bring her back to the brothel, and you have spent your $300. And in the world of sex trade, the younger a child, the greater the perversion and the greater the value on a young life. The younger the child, the higher the value. I came back to my hotel room that night enraged, shocked, horrified. I wanted nothing more than to just grab an axe, a gun, a bomb. I didn't care what. I wanted to go back to that street and I wanted to rip open the doors. I wanted to take every little child out of there, bring her or him to safety. I wanted to put them in the protection of a home and a family where they would be loved, where they would be cared for, where all the vile, terrible things that were done to them would be just a memory in the past. I wanted to blow up those buildings. I wanted to take the women, the mama-sans, the madams, who were enabling this system, and I wanted to beat them. I'm telling you, I was enraged. I wanted nothing but violence to end what was this travesty that was going on. The next day we went and met some of the little girls who had been rescued from the sex trade. And we were in a place where some organizations, I have to tell you, the church has not been that active around the world. It's sad. It's worse than sad. It is a travesty in and of itself that the Church of Jesus Christ is not more vocal about this issue. But where we were, the church was very weak. The church in Cambodia had been ravaged by the genocide and, unlike Rwanda, has not recovered nearly as well. And so the church in Cambodia was very, very weak and was doing very little. And so it took outside organizations who rescued some of these little girls and were caring for them. That shouldn't be. We need to take our place as the Church of Jesus Christ. But at that moment, that's who was there. And so in these homes that were run by some non-government organizations, philanthropic organizations, there were little girls. Some of them were, this is a little girl who was from the Karen people originally from Myanmar, from Burma. She had been trafficked, and she was in a home, and here she was presenting, some of the little girls were presenting a play to us dressed in their native dress. Some of the girls were learning how to sew, some of them were learning how to do different crafts, all of them sitting on the floor. We were able to just join them, to sit on the floor, to converse with them, to connect with them, to hug them. Many of them were smiling, they were laughing, they were affectionate, and I sat there thinking, how in the world can they smile? How in the world can they laugh? How can they even give and receive affection when they have been so traumatized, so brutalized, so many of them? How do they ever recover? How do they have a dream for their life after what has happened to them happened? How many of these girls will be sold back into slavery? How many of them will be returned to families who will then sell them again? How many of these girls are going to have a future? How many of these girls are HIV positive? And many of them were. I don't know if there's, the only thing that could be worse than to be trafficked into the sex trade or into human slavery, bondage the rest of your life, the only thing that could make that worse is if then you also became HIV positive and would die. And this is what was the case of many of these beautiful little girls. Many of them sat, and I could see what maybe they couldn't see for themselves, and that was an early death, because they were HIV positive and they did not have access to the medication. And so my two worlds collided. My passion for people with HIV and orphans suddenly collided with the world of trafficking, and it left me broken. It's heartbreaking, it's unthinkable as you sit here and you hear these stories, you've watched, or your heart has already moved, and you've already been touched in some way, and the truth is that honestly it starts to feel just so far away. I mean, that little girl in her native dress and her Karen outfit, you go, well, I see that at Epcot, okay? That's the kind of thing you see at Epcot. That's the kind of thing you see in movies. But people don't really live like that, right? But she's a real little girl, and it's not a costume. And she was trafficked, and she was HIV positive. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution proclaims this: neither slavery, nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States. So I want to bring your attention back from a place like Cambodia or Thailand, and I want to bring you square here into the United States. Because this is relevant. This proclamation is relevant, not just 150 years ago, but it's relevant today. Our forefathers, our government leaders said that there would no longer be slavery or involuntary servitude on the grounds of the United States. Within our borders, this would no longer exist. Unfortunately, in 2005, the Department of Justice reported that between 2001 and 2005, there had been an estimated 100,000 to 150,000 sex slaves in the United States. 150,000 sex slaves here? In our neighborhoods? In our communities? In our cities? This place of freedom, this place of justice for all, this place where we proclaim liberty and justice for all is a place where sex slavery exists, where involuntary servitude is a way of life for thousands and thousands of people. In 2009, a University of Pennsylvania study estimated that there were nearly 300,000, Judge Sam said this, nearly 300,000 youth in the United States are at risk for being sexually exploited. Most of them either runaways or throwaways. I have to tell you, when I got that statistic a few weeks ago when I was asked to speak at this, I wrote back and I said, this can't be so. Where did this number come from? The person wrote back to me and said, I think that's right. I'm going to look at the numbers. And I wrote back and go, can't be right. Got to be an exaggeration. 300,000. But you guys, it's not an exaggeration. It's the truth. This is the truth. That there are 300,000 of American children who are at risk in this moment for being exploited in the sex trade in our country. And on top of that, the State Department estimates that between 14,000 and 17,000 foreign nationals are transported to the United States to be a part of sex trafficking here. Not even our own citizens, but other people are brought here against their will, and it's happening every day in our country. Here's the part that just rocked me, kind of put this all together for me. The State Department publishes a report every year called Trafficking in Persons Report, and it documents the sex trade around the world. It looks at all the different countries around the world and documents how many people are estimated to be in the sex trade in those countries. And it publishes this report, and it lists the country that are the worst. There are these different tiers of, where it's the very worst to where it's mild. And for the first time, the United States is included in that report. Does that not rock you? To know that our country is now included amongst countries where sex trafficking is considered a problem? When we hold ourselves up to the same standards that we hold up to other countries, we have failed. We fall into the same category as some of the other countries. And I'm ashamed. So what are we supposed to do? Because really the bottom line is, of course, I'm thrilled that you're here because you want to learn and you want to know, and I'm thrilled. But I know it's like me. There's something that stirs in us when we hear the stories of people that are wounded, when I hear the stories of people who are rejected because they're HIV positive, when I hear the stories of orphans who live their lives fending for themselves, when I hear the stories of children being held behind metal bars, padlocked in, when I hear those kinds of stories, not only does it break my heart, not only does it wound me, not only does it just make my heart feel like it's being crushed in a meat grinder, but I get angry. It makes me mad. It just downright makes me mad. It stirs up an emotional response. And if it doesn't stir up an emotional response in you, please go back and spend some time with God. Spend some time on your face with Jesus, because if the pain in our world doesn't rock you, if it doesn't make you angry, if it doesn't stir something up inside of you that says, I can't live with that any longer. I can't just do my normal life, go to the grocery store, go to work, take care of my family, fix my meals, repair my washing machine, mow the lawn, work on my computer. If you can't get beyond that, you're not spending time with God, because God is a God of compassion. God is a God of justice. God is a God of mercy. God is a God of righteousness. And he asks us, if we're going to wear his name, you're going to wear his name on your sleeve, you better be doing and being about what he was about. So I pray that this stirs something in you, but it's not just enough to be emotional. We have to take that emotion, the passion that we feel, that when God does his work in our hearts, and translate it into something practical, translate it into something that makes a difference in the lives of people all around us. So let me tell you what the Justice Task Force and Trafficking Initiative has. As their motto, it's awareness, education, and go. Those three things: awareness, education, and go. Under the awareness, last month, during the January month of emphasis on human trafficking and sex trafficking, they showed a film called Call and Response. And Call and Response is a powerful movie that will break your heart if you look at it. And the reason that they showed it was to raise awareness. It all starts with awareness. The years that I lived completely unaware that there was an HIV pandemic going on in this world, completely, blissfully unaware of what was happening, blissfully unaware that there were 143 million orphans in the world. I lived ignorant of those things. But when there was an awareness that was brought to me, I couldn't stay the same. You're being made aware of what's going on in our world as it relates to trafficking and to human enslavement. And that awareness is going to then move you to the next step, which is education. Now, I tell you, it's like it is in any area that you get concerned about. Most of us want to skip the education part and get right to the go, get right to the do. Okay, we've been made aware, we're mad, we're stirred up, we're passionate, we're eager, we're broken, we're convinced, we're convicted by God's Spirit that this is what we're supposed to do, and we're ready to go, and we want to do it. It's like, okay, just point and shoot me, just put me out there and get me doing something. And we want to skip the part about education. But the fact is, if you don't get educated, if you don't learn, now you've been made aware, but if you don't go to that next step and learn about trafficking, learn about slavery, if you don't learn about HIV, if you don't learn about birth, if you don't learn about these issues that are crucial in our world and part of that call from God, you will be not only ineffective, you will actually be a dangerous rescuer or a dangerous freedom fighter. The world doesn't need dangerous freedom fighters out there who are going off half-cocked with no education, no training, no preparation. So take your passion and your concern and your interest and take the next step, which is to get educated about trafficking and about slavery. And then the go part is, there's so many go parts. And it can be for professionals, there's a role for professionals, there's a role for just average people like me and you who don't have a law degree, who are not who weren't retired federal judges, we're not social workers, we're just people. We're just moms or dads or secretaries, or we've got our own business, or we're entrepreneurs, or we work, we're just people. We don't have some of these trainings, but there are things you can do locally. Pray. Tonight there is a peace team that is leaving for Cambodia with a focus particularly on human trafficking. You can pray for them. You can pray. They're probably gone 14 days is the typical amount for a peace trip. You can pray for that specific team starting tonight. You can start keeping your eyes open. Look as you go. Ladies, if you go get your nails done, start talking to the girls in the nail salon. Don't just assume that everyone who's there is there voluntarily. Start asking questions. Get to know the people. Don't just sit there and zone out and have your nails done, okay, which is so wonderful. But, take a moment and actually connect with the person on the other side and see her as a real person and see what's going on in her life. Keep the dialogue going. Talk to everybody. Just make this a topic of conversation. Become very dull and boring at dinner parties, because what you want to talk about is human need and what the Church of Jesus Christ can do about this need. And if you suspect trafficking, here's a number that we've got on the screen for you. If you suspect at all that trafficking is going on, this is the number to call. It's really easy, 888-3737-888. And there you'll be able to report a suspected trafficking situation. You can sign up to receive the Justice Task Force emails. As Deanna mentioned, there's a skills training in all of this on February 12th. 8:30 to 1:30. Be a great place for you to take that step of education and getting equipped. You can volunteer to become a member of GRIP, which is the Gang Reduction and Intervention Partnership. You can become a GRIP mentor because there is a direct correlation between gang activity and sex trafficking. And it's a program that we have going here in at Saddleback, and it's awesome. We talked about it, I remember at Christmas, Brian Ueda was showing us how some of the meals and things were delivered to some of those families. I don't know if you remember where the kids, if they stayed in school for a certain amount of time, they earned it was Thanksgiving. They got a Thanksgiving dinner for their families. It's something very cool that's going on at Saddleback. If you want to get part of that, you can email trafficking@saddleback.com. You can get on the email list, volunteer to be part of the initiative, volunteer to be part of the leadership of the trafficking initiative. And then on a global basis, there is another human trafficking peace trip that's coming up. It's to Sri Lanka in June 29 to July 15th. And as I understand it, there's still room for 15 people that can go. And you can email srilanka@saddleback.com and get some more information on that trip. Or you could create your own peace team. There may be a country where God has already stirred your heart and you know that there's human trafficking issues going on there. Create your own peace team. Decide that you'll be, volunteer to be the leader, round up a few friends, come and get trained, and let God launch you into another place where you can be serving through churches in country where you will be going. So I want to pray with you right now and then introduce you to, after I pray, Elizabeth Stipe is going to come share a little bit. Elizabeth formed the HIV/AIDS initiative with me about 7 years ago, and we led that together. She's now the Orphan Care Director for Saddleback, and she and I together are pretty dangerous. We foam at the mouth when we start talking about it because it's such a passion. You'll enjoy hearing what she has to say. So let me pray just as we pause now for what we're talking about so far. Father, if I didn't know that you were a God of justice and that you would make it all right someday, I'd just give up. I couldn't even serve you if I didn't know that every tear I've ever cried over the pain that others have suffered, if I didn't know that you held in your hands the tears of broken men and women and children around the world who are in this moment, not just around the world, in Orange County, God, in LA, in California, in the United States. If I didn't know that you were going to make it all right someday and that you had called us to be a part of that, I just couldn't serve you. So Lord, we bring to you those who are in this moment either at risk or who are currently enslaved in some way. God, I ask that you break the chains that hold them, that you would bring to justice those who, for a variety of reasons, do not see what they're doing as evil. The evil one trounces through our world, God, as if he owns this place. And he doesn't. And we long for the day in which you will reclaim what is yours and you will restore what has been broken. God, I ask that the church around the world and in the United States will be strengthened so that it will not be left to others to care for the children and the men and the women who are rescued. But it will be the church who claims her place as your bride, claims your place as hands and feet in this world, and that those churches will be strengthened. And in the place of being strengthened, they will look outside of their own four walls and do something to stop it, to stop trafficking. God, we can't pray that for people in other countries unless we're willing to do that here. So God, make us willing to do what we can do to stop trafficking and enslavement here in our country. I thank you for what you did through brave men and women 100+ years ago when you ended the Civil War, when there were those who said there shall not be slaves in the United States ever again. I thank you for those people of justice and righteousness who saw that what was happening was evil and must come to an end. We're grateful for the price that they paid to make that happen. But God, we don't want to just look to the past. We want to be those same bold people today, those same bold people who will take the steps necessary, that we would pay with our lives if you ask us to, so that others might walk in freedom, that others might know that life is not about evil enslavement, but about walking in the joy of the Lord. God, I thank you for these men and women who are here. Stir them up, break their hearts, crush them. God, just break their hearts. May they weep, may they feel, may they choose to respond. In whatever ways you ask, we're ready, and we say yes to you. In the name of Jesus and to the glory of God our Father.